Warhammer Wednesday, and we have nice good lore video for Warhammer Wednesday revolving Kislev, and I don't know why Tsars say Warhammer Wednesday, but I'm going to do it. So today we're going to talk about Boris Ursus, the other legendary lord of the Kislev army, and we will be talking about the Kislev army soon in its entirety. But let's talk about Boris Ursus, the Red Tsar. Tsar Boris Boka was a fierce warrior and a devout follower of the bear god Ursun. He was known by many as Boris Ursus or Radi Boka, Red Boka, a reference to the oceans of enemy blood he spilled in battle. Rising to the throne in 968 or 2492 in the imperial calendar, after his father, Tsar Vladimir Boka, died fighting goblins east of Kislev, Boris inherited a nation that had done little to recover from the devastation caused during the Great War against Chaos of 2302. In a move resented by the old guard of the Kislev court, Radi Boka nearly emptied the treasuries, hiring mercenaries to retrain the Kislev army, rebuilding bridges, roads, and towns, and importing black powder and engineers from the empire. Though it almost bankrupted his family, and several other noble families into the bargain, Tsar Boris's reign will be forever remembered for his driving spirit and eagerness to reclaim the lands that had become infested with goblins, trolls, beastmen, and other vile creatures. He was also instrumental in a revival of the Ursun bear cult, which had slowly been overtaken by the worship of Ulrich, Tal, and other foreign gods. To do so, he undertook the trial of initiation that all priests of Ursun must overcome, and went into the forest to tame a bear. He was not seen or heard of for 18 days, and many feared he had met a gruesome fate in the depths of the icy forests. Preparations began for the coronation of his infant daughter, Katarine, who was only 4 years old at the time, when the search parties came across his unconscious form on the 19th day. His still body was guarded by a bear of gigantic proportions that would not allow anyone near. The Tsar was surrounded by the corpses of over 24 wolves, and the snow was red with their blood. Nothing the searchers could do would entice the bear away from their ruler or convince it that they had meant no harm. Finally, after another day had passed, Boris awoke, and the bear allowed the searchers to approach and tend to his wounds. The tale Boris related upon his return to Kislev has since passed into folklore, though few doubt the truth of it. 4 days before being found by the searchers, and after much wandering, he came across the mightiest bear he had ever seen, with teeth and claws like sword blades. Taking this as a sign from Ursun, he had confronted the beast, and it had charged him, the ground shaking with the fury of its charge, and a blood-curdling roar echoing through the forest. With his bare hands, he fended off the creature's attacks, but could not overpower it. The struggle lasted a full day before a wolf pack, drawn by the scent of their combined blood, attacked. The wolves immediately went for the bear, but Boris sprang to its aid, crushing their skulls with his fists and tearing them from his back. Boris was badly wounded, however, and fell beneath the attacks of the wolves. As the beasts closed in for the kill, it was the bear's turn to protect his erstwhile enemy from the common foe. It stood over the supine Tsar, tearing the wolves apart with its claws and savaging them with its powerful jaws. Boris had slipped into unconsciousness, yet each time he drifted awake, the bear had been there, protecting him from the wolves. The bear returned to Kislev with the Tsar, and from then on, whenever Boris took to the field of battle, it was atop the back of Urskin, as the beast came to be known, meaning bear brother. Both a symbol of Ursun's power and affection for Boris, and also an implacable enemy in the battle. Tsar Boris met his end in battle in 2517, whilst leading a polk north of the Linsk River into the Troll country. In an unnamed river crossing, the Tsar charged deep into the Kurgan army of Hedzar Fedaj, but soon found himself surrounded and cut off from the rest of his army. He and Urskin fought with all the might and fury of the bear god himself, but even Red Boris could not triumph against such odds. Urskin was able to fight his way clear of the Kurgans and carry the Tsar back to the rest of the army. But it was already too late. The Tsar had taken a score of wounds, each enough to be mortal. Only when the battle was won did the Tsar slide from the back of Urskin and die. His faithful mount roared in mourning for a full night before setting off into the bleak Northlands, and legend has it that to this day, Erskine continues to hunt down the creatures of chaos that slew his master. So real interesting there, right? And in 2517 is actually slightly after Karl Franz takes the throne. And I've talked about this many, many times, but we know from the actual Allied contingents that Boris Ursus, the Red Tsar as he's known, cannot be the commander of your Kislev army if you have Tsarina. So obviously that makes sense because Tsarina has to be the commander if she is in the army. So you have that same mechanic as you have almost any other army with a lord taking control of it. But it'll be interesting of how they're going to do this because both of them are very lore friendly. Are they really their only legendary lord options? But both kind of conflict with each other from the standpoint of being alive at the same time. But you know what? What's his name? Wurzog is dead in the lore, and Total and Creative Assembly put him in. So I don't really see this as really a huge barrier. There's going to be some kind of like, scoffing and looking down the nose, but fuck all that. He's a giant Russian dude on a bear with winged hussar wings on him. I'm all for it. So let's talk about his special rules as well as his items. So he has a special rule called Kin of the Bear God, whereas Katerina she would give bonuses to Griffin Legions, which are basically winged hussars. Boris Ursus gives bonuses to Kossars, which are basically these light armor, great axe wielding bowmen. So think Lothern Sea Guard, but rather than being, elves and having shields and spears and longbows, think of them as Russians with light armors and wolf and animal pelts, as well as bows. So a kind of dual purpose unit. You have this anti-infantry, or at least anti-large AP kind of unit, or AP would be guaranteed with them, in addition to being a bowman. So I guess look at them as white lions of trace with a bowman aspect attached to them. But that's how you kind of see them. Well, the Kin of the Bear God means that Boris can actually increase the attack of the Kossars that are with him for an additional 30 points. How this would be kind of translated into Warhammer is that maybe he gives a native increase to the melee attack of either Kossars around him or as a whole in campaign. Maybe he gets a lot of passive bonuses. Maybe one would just be called Kin of the Bear God, which increases the melee attack and maybe the upkeep cost, or it reduces the upkeep cost and the recruitment cost of any of the Kossars you choose to recruit for your Kislev army. It would make a lot of sense. Something we've seen plenty of times in other things, like Tretch has a lot of bonuses when using Storm Vermin. Same kind of thing here with Boris and the Kossars. Now, as far as his magic items, for special rules though, he doesn't have anything else outside of that. Nothing crazy like immune to psychology or innate frost resistance or anything like that. The majority of it comes from his magic items. So we'll talk about his magic items here. The Armor of Ursun. Forged on the spring equinox, one of the holiest days of the cult of Ursun, the powdered bones of a score of the mightiest bears were mixed with the steel of the armor before it was quenched in the finest mead. This suit of armor is imbued with the power and might of Ursun himself, and those who wear it feel his power coursing through their veins. One thing we haven't talked about are a lot of the different pantheon or gods of Kislev. There are quite a few. I mean, there's Tor, there's Ursun. So Kislev does have its own pantheon and holy days and everything like that. So it is important to note that they take a lot of credence in their gods. Daz is another one, the god of fire. So we'll talk about that when we talk about their pantheon. But religion is very important in the Kislev society. And so they put a lot of credence in them, obviously, like they do with this Armor of Ursun, because they dipped it in mead, honey ale. Holy shit. So, got that going for them, I guess you could say. I wish it was vodka, but I'll take mead. I'll go with it. So the way the Armor of Ursun works is that it basically is a pretty modest armor save for him, gives him a 4-up armor save, but it means that anytime anyone attacks him and actually makes a wound on Boris, he actually gets to do an attack back immediately. Now, obviously, we can't have that mechanic happening in a real-time game like Total War Warhammer, but maybe this kind of grants him like a Shield of Thorns ability. And I've been looking a lot into Shield of Thorns because, like I've said many times, we have to start having some sort of reactive result for things. There's so many armors, there's so many spells in the game that cause a reaction where the character attacks back immediately, or it does damage back in a reactive type of way. The Armor of Ursun's that exact thing. So the way the Shield of Thorns works, and the way it kind of does that, is it gives them missile resistance and increases the weapon strength to kind of react of, oh, okay, we can't make them attack back, but we'll make their attack stronger to kind of hint that they're getting that extra attack somehow incorporated in the roll. I guess what I'm saying is I understand where their mind's at. So maybe the Armor of Ursun confers a natural increase to weapon strength for Boris, as well as a missile resistance. So this could be an activatable item in the same way that, like, you could say the Shield of the Lion for Leon Leoncoeur, or it would be something that just kind of gives him a passive bonus to both of those. I could see it maybe being as more an activatable, because if we talk about the Shard Blade next, you'll see it kind of makes some sense to be alongside it. So the Shard Blade is with the lore blurb here. Boris carries a mighty polearm with a blade crafted from ice, hewn from the glaciers of Norska, and magically bound by the ice wizards of Kislev to remain forever frozen. When Boris strikes a foe, shards of ice water enter their veins and freeze their blood. You know, just kind of drowns them outright, because they're Russians. Why would it not be something terrifying like this? Holy shit. But this ability would increase his weapon strength because it adds to his strength. Obviously, it'd be AP because it's a polearm. It's a giant halberd, as you guys can see. But on top of it, anything that fails a toughness test in the tabletop suffers an additional wound that cannot be saved no matter what. So maybe this is an activatable in the same way that we see with maybe Ungrim Ironfist. It's got his Red Woe or whatever the hell it is, as well as his axe, that it's a high AP increase and high weapon damage increase. Same thing with Shard Blade. So you pop Armor of Ursun, you are doing a ton more damage because the armor helps you strike back, but it also gives you a lot of missile resistance. And the Shard Blade itself increases your AP and your weapon strength as well. So maybe Boris himself is a bit of a shock trooper. He gets in there, he's got a lot of damage he can deal out, but he's maybe limited in mobility because his bear, Erskine, is not the fastest mount in the world. Maybe that's the kind of caveat that they'll give it, or the kind of counter to that, because they're going to have to balance him some way or another. I don't see him as just being this wrecking ball of pure destruction, because we'll talk about Erskine right here. He's got his little winter coat, which is the nice coat that you wear in winter times when it's a little bit colder out than the summer times. The summer coat's a little bit... Wait, what am I talking about? Shit. Winter coat on a bear. It's very thick in tabletop, so he gets a pretty high armor save. So I would assume that as a whole, the defensive capabilities of Boris in melee are going to be a little bit larger than, say, your normal lord on a mount, because, well, Erskine's a giant bear. So this is going to make him a little bit different than, say, a guy riding a horse, right? Because it's a bear. And if you've seen the movie Revenant, you know what it's like to watch a bear devour a human being. On top of it, he's got an ability called Thunder of Ursun, which just means he causes fear. I think that's a shoo-in. That's just very simple translation right on over. And lastly, he's got Fury of Ursun. And basically this means that he has to pursue anyone that flees. So maybe this just means that as a whole, maybe Boris has Frenzy or something of the sort, or maybe they're immune to psychology. I'm not sure how they would do this, because we don't have anything in Total War Warhammer that gives you bonuses or encourages things to what's called pursue. You have to pursue in tabletop. So basically, if you're fighting something and you win the combat and they flee, you can roll to pursue them. If your die roll is higher than their flee roll, you overcome them and kill them outright. If it's shorter than, then you move the distance and you're that much closer to them, you can charge them in your next turn. So I'm not sure how they would really do this. Maybe the Fury of Ursun gives them maybe it can be something like giving him a charge bonus and a speed bonus, and kind of bring that charge home. I'm not really sure how they would do that, and I'd love to kind of get an idea for what you guys think about this. I'm really excited for the possibility of Kislev coming to the game. I love the Winged Hussars. I love that whole era of Poland, Lithuania, Eastern Europe, Russian early history, and don't ever put Russian and Polish history together. If you know a Polish or Russian person, they'll cut your head off. But still, Kislev gives a very strong nod to all of that in a pretty interesting way. I mean, Kossars is like a combination of Hussar and Cossack. But it's really interesting how they did stuff with Kislev. and are very interesting to see how they're going to do things with Total War Warhammer 3 and incorporating these guys. They might even incorporate them in Total War Warhammer 2, or maybe as a DLC pre-order bonus like they did for Norska. But I think the majority of Kislev is kind of gated by the Darklands and the further northeast portions with the Kurgans, so maybe putting them into the Mortal Empires is not the best idea. But as always, guys, we'll talk more about our lovely Kislevs when we talk about the total army list. We'll go into the history of them, their religion, their pantheon, as well as who their units are, because they don't have a lot of units. I'm assuming they're going to have a lot of Empire carryover units, but we'll kind of discuss that when we talk about the army. But as always, guys, thanks for watching here today. Please comment below and let me know what you think about how you would like to see Boris incorporated into the game. He is a pretty unique lord because he is such a damage powerhouse, but he is also a pretty defensive lord, but not the most defensive. He doesn't have any natural ward saves. His total armor save, I think, would be 3+. So you can see he is not the most defensive, but you can also tell that he does quite a bit of damage. But as always, guys, comment, like, subscribe, all that kind of jazz. But thanks for watching, and take care.